Well, welcome back. I've been thinking about what I'd like to share this time, and I've been doing a lot of work in my garden recently. It's reminding me about a whole lot of things that have happened in that space over the years. We moved to this home when my son was 1. He's now 30, so was turned 30 in September, so a little bit more than 30. So I guess we've been here almost 30 years. That's a long time, and I've seen a lot of things happen in that time. Gardens are wonderful places. If you're a gardener, I'm sure you'll agree. If you're not a gardener, you may not have had the experience to know how wonderful it is to spend time in a garden and see things grow. There are so many life lessons that have come to me through the garden, and other people have told me similar things, but I wanted to share a few of them with you so that you might grasp how it is that God shares things with people who are looking. The Bible talks about people who have eyes to see and ears to hear. So I guess people that are not looking are not going to see it. Not going to see it. People who haven't maybe developed certain values in their life, they may also not see it either. But it's there right in front of everybody, and I'm going to share a few of those kind of things, but also some things that are very personal just to me. So just because I share these things with you doesn't mean to say that you walk out into your garden and the same thing is going to happen to you. But there may be some different stories that are very personal to you as well. So as I said, we've been here 30 years. I was a gardener before we moved to this place. We had a previous block of land that we did lots of gardening in. But when we came here, I guess I'd have to say most of the gardening responsibility fell to me. And I'm actually awfully glad about that now, because I've been the one that's been able to get such blessing from it. So I was in the garden to begin with. When you've got we built a house on a vacant block of land. So there was lots of open earth. Where there's open earth, there's lots of weeds until it's massaged into something that is, more planned than just weeds. And it's taken a long time for that to take place because there's quite a lot of space. And we didn't put a boundary on our property next to bushland, which is next to us, because we loved looking out onto the bushland so much that we just didn't want to feel separated from it. We wanted to be able to look straight from the house out into that space and sort of walk into that space without having to go through fences or whatever. So there's a whole lot of space next to our property that nobody else looks after, and so I look after. And so lots of weeding, lots of moving soil from one place to another because it wasn't where I wanted it to be. And yeah, just lots of pulling out weeds. And I do remember one day being outside and pulling weeds out once again for the umpteen millionth time in this area next to us. And we really I didn't want to put a lot of money into that space because it wasn't our land. Council, I guess, could come along at any point and rip up whatever we did. So didn't really want to put a lot of money into it. So I just was trying to maintain it by removing the weeds and putting a few things in that we had available to us for free that would look okay in that space. So I was out there pulling out weeds, and I'm thinking to myself, it wasn't even really a prayer. Sometimes I wonder whether that's kind of how prayers start, thoughts, So I was thinking to myself, I had actually kind of connected the weeds in the garden with things in my life that are not what I want them to be. Think weeds are really stuff in the garden that isn't beautiful. It doesn't really serve a purpose that we connect to. I'm sure they've got a reason for being there, but there's no purpose that I can see for them to be there, other than just maybe to make a bit more oxygen in the air for humans to breathe. And so I'm thinking to myself, I'm connecting that kind of concept with things in my own life, which were things that I thought just needed to be gone, and I'm not going to go into detail on what all of those things were, but there was a variety of things that I just thought, that's just not helpful. It's taking up space. It's causing me not to be able to put things in my life that I'd really like to have there, etc., etc. So I'm thinking to myself, as I'm pulling out weeds, I'm thinking, how am I ever going to get all of this muck out of my life, all of this rubbish out of my life? That's just a thought. How am I ever going to be able to do that? And in my mind, it's not an audible voice. In my mind, it's a thought. It's a thought, really. Comes, not my thought, because it was opposite to what I was just thinking. In my mind comes a thought, in quietness and confidence shall be your strength. And I'm thinking, that sounds like a Bible verse. I don't know where it is, but that sounds very much like a Bible verse. And so I thought, oh, okay, that sounds like God. So I was talking to him now. He had my attention. And I replied back, and I said, in my mind, was praying and saying to him, I understand what this quietness is, but I do not know what this confidence is. I was always good at being quiet. Always good at being quiet. Confidence, not so much. So I was praying and saying, Lord, I know what this quietness is, but what is this? I don't know what this confidence is. What is this confidence? And I'm thinking, we're having a conversation. I'm waiting for his response to come back. Crickets, nothing. Okay, and I was quite disappointed. I thought we were talking. I thought we were getting somewhere. And so I thought, okay, right. Well, I've just have to leave it there. I think that there's some information in there for me. I just have to leave it for now and let's see what happens. I didn't really have any huge expectation, although I did sort of think that, God had been speaking with me. So I thought maybe this is something that will continue, but I didn't really know how it would. Anyway, so in about 2 weeks' time, I'm in church and I'm listening to the sermon. And the sermon was about a passage in the New Testament. I think it's Peter. I should have gone and looked it up. And the passage was, this is the confidence we have in him, that if we ask anything according to his will, then he hears us. And when he hears us, we can be confident that we have the request we've asked of him, something to that effect. So I didn't mention to you, I did go and look up that, the first thing, in quietness and confidence shall be your strength. And I did go and look it up, and it was in Isaiah. So it was a Bible verse that just came to my mind at the perfect time. God put it in there. I don't remember ever having, memorized it or anything, although I might have come across it a number of times as I read through the Bible throughout my life. So one Bible verse in response to how am I ever going to get all this muck out of my life? And, I'm processing that, saying, in quietness and confidence shall be my strength. I'm quiet. I don't know what this confidence is. And then 2 weeks later, the sermon on Sunday morning was that one about when we ask things according to his will, he hears us, and we can be confident that we've got the request that we've asked of him. So very specific, in terms of God speaking to me in the garden about things that were very pertinent in my life at that time, that I really needed to feel like I could make some progress on, not on my own, obviously, but with God. So I liken that to, Adam and Eve in the garden before the fall. God came and walked with them every day and talked with them and, shared things that were happening for Adam and Eve and gave them guidance and wisdom and the joy that there must have been in that whole process taking place. Although obviously Adam and Eve took it for granted because they chose to be independent of God's will and do their own thing, and sadly had to be removed from the garden. But nonetheless, they had that experience, and it's recorded for us that that's the experience that they had. The original plan with God was that He spent time with us in the garden. So I don't think it's any fluke, really, that when people do spend time in the garden and they are seekers of God, they're looking for God, they're looking for Him to answer, to discuss things with them and sort things out and, give them some wisdom on things. It's no surprise, really, that He can meet us there. Obviously, we don't have to be in the garden in order for that to take place, but there are lots of life lessons that you can learn from the garden. So, over the years since then, I guess the garden has gone through many, variations. I've put a great deal of effort in at some times, which was really hard because I had young kids that I needed a lot of my time, and I was working and involved in church ministries, and so it was a great deal of effort. I had to put a bit of time aside in order to get the garden into shape. And then there would be times when I would think to myself, I just can't keep up with all of this. Nobody else in the family really was helping me on a consistent basis. There might have been help here and there, but not, like every weekend, let's get out there and find what we have to, look after. It was sort of left to me. So I did, to be honest, my enthusiasm waned at times because it was just a huge task, especially with that area next to us that was community land, like council land, that I was looking after. So it did get overgrown, and it did not look pretty at times, and I would get stuck into it again and try and sort things out again. Part of the issue is that we're on the side of a hill, and water, as it comes down, washes soil that hasn't been properly retained, and so then that soil is on top of rocks. Then the weeds, the seeds from the weeds get in there and grow. I don't want them to, but so it's a complicated kind of property, but and not a lot of grass that you can just mow and say that's done. It looks beautiful. It's more like rock areas and low-lying soil in other areas as well. So it's not been consistently well maintained, but I love my garden. I love looking out through the windows and having a look at it. In fact, I'm looking out through the window now at the space next door to our property. I love it, and it draws my attention a lot of the time. When I'm in the garden, I'm happy, and I'm trimming trees, pulling weeds, shaping things, planting here and there. It gives me a great deal of satisfaction. Sometimes I put music on, sometimes I pray, sometimes I listen to the Bible through like a speaker outside. Sometimes I sing, Christian music, worship music, etc. So I probably some of my most favourite times in my life have been in the garden. I did early on stand on our balcony and look out over the bushland, which is the extended area where we just don't have a boundary on our property. It's like, the garden without borders, basically. And I was standing there looking at the bushland area and thinking how lovely it was, how beautifully green. It's mainly eucalyptus with a few other, bushland kind of trees here and there. But I do remember thinking, as I was standing there looking, it's lovely, but I wish, this is a wish, not a prayer or anything, I wish it had some tree ferns and palms, or yeah, some tree ferns in it, because areas that I used to love to go to that were rainforesty had tree ferns in them, and I thought it would look so beautiful if it had some tree ferns. So that thought came, and went, and years later, lo and behold, some tree ferns started growing in the bushland close to our house. Not everywhere, just close to our house. And I thought, when that started happening, it was sort of like a real gift. God, as if he can't hear our thoughts, had heard my thoughts, and decided that he would give me what I would really love to have, which was some tree ferns to make it look kind of rainforesty out there. I'm really into rainforests. And then when the tree ferns came, I thought, oh, that's beautiful, but rainforests also have palm trees, and that's, I really love palm trees too. So, and wouldn't it be lovely if there were some palm trees? Anyway, there weren't any palm trees at the time, but then a couple of years later, these palm trees start popping up. So it was kind of like these gifts. I mean, I'm not going to say that it's just because I wanted to have those things, but the timing of it was impeccable. I would ask, and then within the natural period of time that it would take for seeds to germinate and grow and start to be noticeable and everything, there they would be. So it was sort of like, for me, it wasn't like, I do believe that God was blessing me through being involved in the garden and just watching what was happening, looking at what was there, imagining what could be there that would make it better, kind of longing for it, God knowing that there was a longing in my heart, and then he would provide for it. And then another thing that happened was that I always wanted to have a crabapple. When I was in my younger years, always thought a crabapple would be beautiful. And the last property that we were in, we knew we weren't going to stay there forever, so I wasn't going to plant one there. But when we moved here, I still had a desire for a crabapple, beautiful blossom tree. But I just, with everything that was happening in life, didn't have time for all of that, so I just didn't do it. And then one day, this weed, I thought it was growing at the end of our street, not in our property, but it was in the bushland area. We're at the end of a street. It's not even a cul-de-sac, it's like a dead end. So it's not even a turning circle, it's just that the road stops outside our house. And so in that little space there was this bushy, kind of weedy looking twiggy thing growing up. And I thought, oh great, another thing for me to have to manage, because the council never will. So that I was planning to actually rip it out, cut it back, whatever it was that I had to do to stop it from growing, because I didn't really want it to be ugly. And then I just didn't get to it. And then one day I was going down to my car to go to work, and I looked across, and there's these little white things popping up all over the tree. And I went over closer to have a look, and lo and behold, it was buds, little blossom buds, bursting into bloom. And I later found out that it was a crabapple. Of all the blossoms that it could have been, it was a crabapple, exactly the one that I had decided earlier in life that I'd really love to have one day. And since then, there's another different blossom tree. I think it's a peach that's grown next to it, right next to it. Now, I certainly didn't actually get in there and plant these two blossom trees. They're in the public space right outside our house. Every day when I drive out and come back home, I see them and I notice them because they're so beautiful, and they don't, just quietly, they don't actually fit in the council space because this is just like bushland. But they do look so beautiful, and I'm so grateful that the council hasn't come in and said, oh, these don't belong here, let's get rid of these, which they could do, but they haven't done that so far. We've had quite a number of years of blossoms from both of the trees, and the peach has started to get little peaches on it, but the possums get into it. So I don't know whether we'll ever actually get to eat those ones, but they look beautiful. So in my garden and in the garden surrounding, in the bushland surrounding my garden, lots and lots of beautiful experiences have taken place. God has spoken to me quite specifically. What he said to me, you know, about in quietness and confidence shall be your strength, was really all about the confident side of things. The passage in the New Testament was really all about know what it is that God wants to happen in your life. Get to know God enough so that you know what his will is, and then ask for it. And then you know he's going to give it to you. You can have confidence in that. That was a mind-blowing experience for me, working through all of that. And it came, it made itself very obvious in my life because there were several issues that I needed to work through, and I needed to know what God wanted in this situation so that I could confidently ask for it. And then I'd ask for it, and then it happened. So prayer is a wonderful thing. And there's one more thing I want to share about my particular garden. This is, there are blessings in every single garden, but in my particular garden where we live. So, as I said, we've lived here for quite some time. When we'd lived here for probably around about, how long would it be? Maybe about 25 years? Yeah. When we'd lived here for about 25 years, I decided that I was going to look up the name of the street name and see what it meant. And I believed the word is Jinnah. Okay, so it's Jinnah Road. So I looked, I believed that it was going to be Aboriginal because it sort of sounded like an Aboriginal name, Jinnah. Yeah. So I looked it up, and lo and behold, it wasn't Aboriginal at all. It was Hebrew. And the word Jinnah means God is gracious. And it just blew my mind because I thought all this time I hadn't known what that word Jinnah means. I've driven home to Jinnah Road. I've driven home to God is gracious every single day that I've driven home, you know, that we've been living here. And every day when I leave, I've driven out on Jinnah Road, God is gracious. Like, you know, the bookends of the day, you know, coming and going, being surrounded by the reminder of God's grace in our life. Now, grace is really God's capacity. When God gives us grace, he's giving us the capacity to achieve things that we can't do on our own. You know, he empowers us to be able to do things or be involved in things that ordinarily we wouldn't have the capacity to do. But when we are part of his plan, when we seek after him, when we are looking for his involvement in our lives and for his goodness to come to us, to cooperate with him, to put ourselves in a position where he can bring the good that he wants to bring to us, then he can, and he does. And so that, you know, the street name, Jinnah Road, God is gracious, being Hebrew, connecting me to, you know, the beginning of mankind and the Hebrews, God's people. Yeah, and there is a possibility. Well, My family line on my father's side has connections to the Jews. They were living, the ones that we know of were living in Germany. So they would have been persecuted if they had still been Jewish when the war was on, the World War II was on. Fortunately, they'd actually converted to Christianity by that time, and probably were not living in Germany during that period. They had moved to Australia. Okay, so connections in my family to God's people connect like it was an arc, you know, coming back. The name of the street that we're living in being a Hebrew name, meaning God is gracious. I mean, it could have been a Hebrew name meaning anything. It could have been like, you know, the horses are running down the street or something rather, like nothing particularly significant, but it was a Hebrew name about God's grace and a reminder of the empowering presence of God in our lives to accomplish things that ordinarily on our own we just couldn't do. We would not have the capacity to do. So I just wanted to take time to share those things, and specifically there might be some people in my family that perhaps hadn't heard that whole story, that might be a good one for them to know about and to watch maybe a couple of times to kind of get the whole flow. But there could be other people that might be interested in that as well. I don't take any credit for anything, you know, being special in any way for those things to happen to me, but I do value God in my life more than anything else. And I'm so blessed to have been in a position to be looking for him and finding him in the reality of my life experience, in a way that I can share that with other people and make it somewhat more tangible than just, sometimes people, you know, when they're just talking about God and they're quoting Bible verses, etc., it can sound very empty, like, you know, that's just words. Well, it's not just words. When truth touches our lives and is lived out and we see it happening right in front of us, it is more real than anything else that you can imagine, because it's connecting us with the source of everything, of, you know, God, the Creator, who loves us and has plans for our lives. And when we engage with his plans for our lives and we cooperate with them, then we are blessed beyond what we can imagine. You know, even if nothing else in my life ever happened that was, you know, special like that, just that story, and there's a few others, but even if there was just that one story would be enough for me to just be so thrilled that I'm involved with God, that I'm connected with God, that I'm walking with God, that he's involved in my life, and he's not only able to do things, but he does things that actually bring goodness to me and I can share with other people. So thank you very much for listening. I know that's a very long video. It's almost half an hour that you've been listening, but I do thank you very much for listening. I hope that there's some things in there that kind of make you think, things that might make you want to look into, you know, doing, you know, exploring concepts or exploring God a little bit more for yourself personally. There's nothing more that would bring me joy other than that, to think that other people start to notice things that they hadn't noticed before. God starts to reveal himself in ways that he hasn't had the opportunity to do before, because we didn't have the eyes to see, we didn't have the ears to hear. So hopefully that might help you. And I'll finish up here. I do lots of videos like this from time to time, so there'll be more. So I'll say goodbye for now, but I will be back.